For today's video and using the loop yarn, we have from Loops and Bustles. It's part of the Loops and Threads brand. This is put out by Michael's Arts and Crafts. And the color I have here is aubergine. I hope I'm saying all these words right. Anyway, as it states on the band, it says, no tools required. Isn't that awesome? But we will have one tool that we will need, and that is our scissors. I have removed the band from my skein here, and when we work loop yarn, you really want to pull it from the outside. Normally, like in a regular skein, you'd find that little piece on the inside, but in all honesty, it's best for this to be worked from the outside of the skein. Now, before we begin, let's point out a few things about this yarn. You'll see that it has loops and it has little loops. Okay? Part of the decoration, part of the way they manufactured it. Okay? So before you begin any project with this particular loop yarn, you also want to cut a little bit or leave this still intact. And I also notice here on this must have a chain stitch. So if you pull on this, yep, it has a chain stitch. So if you pull on that just a little bit, you'll see it'll start to come apart. You do not want to leave it apart. So we're going to undo a couple of loops here. This will be where we have to sew it in later. We can use a crochet hook or even our finger. Right here it got a little tangled up. But what we want to do is make it so it does not unravel anymore. So we're going to stop right here. And we're going to find the end of that chain. And then you want to take the big part of that chain and pull it through. Okay, so here's, can you see that little tiny loop right there? Let me see if my finger can help show it to you. That little tiny loop. We want to take it and pull it. Pull our yarn through. Well, not the yarn, the string actually. Go ahead and pull it through, and that'll make it so that the chain will stop unchaining. Okay, you see how I can pull on it and it won't do anything anymore? Do not cut this. We need to take this and we'll weave it in with our ends. So I guess in a sense we really do need something at the end. So I am encouraging you to have your tapestry needle handy for the end of this particular video. Okay, so you ready to get started with our pattern? I know you are. Let's get going. Now, before we begin, I want you to see what our pattern is going to look like. If you need to screenshot, this would be a good time to screenshot it, and I'll hold it for you. Okay. But I also wanted to point out too, we have multiples of 8. That's the reason why you see 1 through 8 across the top twice, which means you could do it however big you want it. Also, our rows are multiples of 8. So notice how we have 1 through 8 twice. Our key here is if you see a regular square, it's a knit stitch. If you see a square with a dot in it, it's the purl stitch. And when we get to starting, I'll help you to understand more about what is knit and what is purl when using loop yarn. So here's our pattern. And how this is going to work is we're going to spread out our loop yarn, but we will be coming back this way, and we will go across this way and go across this way. You'll see how simple it'll be as we construct this with the loop yarn. And the nice thing is you don't need no crochet hook. You can take it with you on the go. Now this is a sample. You can make a scarf out of it if you want to continue on. You can widen it and make a blanket out of it. It'll be a beautiful blanket. And the possibilities are endless, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to see how you can use a knit pattern while using this loop yarn. So let's get started. As I encourage you on many of the other projects that I put on YouTube, I'm going to encourage you to pull a little bit out at a time, mostly enough to cover whatever it is you're doing for that particular row. So here we're going to start out, try and get our loops all going in the same direction here, and we want to start off by counting out 17 loops. When you get to that 17th loop, make sure that all of your loops are aiming in the same direction. So that'll make our first row of the knit and purl stitches a little bit easier. All right, so to give us a heads up on how we're going to be doing this, our knit stitch, we will take our working yarn right here, and the loop will go into the center, and you will pull all the way up to the line right here, like this. All right, if you're doing a purl stitch, we're going to be taking it so that the working yarn comes on top of our foundation loop, and you're going to pull it all the way up. And can you see the difference that the stitch gives? It has that little hump in the front right here. So if we were to pull it out and say, well, I need a knit stitch, so we'll take our working yarn and go through that foundation loop here, and you'll see our little hump is in the back. Okay, let's do that one more time for the purl stitch. So we're going to take our working yarn, go over it, and go right through it. And that'll give us our purl stitch. Okay, let's get started on our triangles. So for our filming purposes, I put my needle here so I can fix my camera and everything as necessary. So let's get started. So our first stitch, we're going to bring our yarn around, is going to be a knit stitch. So we're going to take the very next loop, and we're going to bring it through our foundation loop. This now will become our new foundation loop for our next row. Our next stitch is the purl stitch, and we're going to be doing that 7 times. So take your working yarn and come over your foundation, take the next loop, and go through. Okay, can you already see the difference? So we're going to do that with the next 7 loops, or next 6 since we did our first one. So here's 2. Usually the first couple of rows are a little tricky until you get something to grip onto, but you'll do fine. So I have 2. Okay, I got 3. There's 4. 5, 6, and here's number 7. Okay, so after you get to the end of a collection here, it's usually a good idea to make sure that those loops are all the way to the end of that foundation loop. All right. Like I said, the first couple of rows will be the little tricky ones, but once we get started, it'll work out just fine. So our next one is our knit stitch. So that means our working yarn is going to go from the bottom up. So it's going to look different than the rest of those. But now we're going to get back and we're going to do 7 purl stitches again. So bring your working yarn on top of your foundation and go ahead and push it through to the back 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 more, 6, and 7. And you'll notice on your foundation you have 1 left. So let's bring our yarn to the back, and with our working one, and here's our foundation one, and here's our working one, we're going to come up from behind, and that'll finish this row. And as before, always bring your loops right there to the end. And there we have our first row done. Another thing that I'm going to encourage you with is at the end of every row, make sure that you have the prescribed amount of loops showing that you're supposed to have. In previous loop projects that I have made, I have miscalculated, and sometimes a couple of rows later I find out, oops, I forgot a loop. I encourage you to always count every row. Just because you do the loops doesn't mean that the loop is actually the right loop. It can happen. So let's always count your loops just to make sure so that you don't have any accidents. Okay, so here's number 17 for us, and we're going to start row 2. So let's bring our working yarn around, so that way we have our loops right here in front of us. Take note of which is the next loop after your final loop here. So here is my next loop. This will start the new row. So we're going to take this loop. We need to knit 2 times. So we're going to come up from behind. There's 1. And we're going to be bringing our working yarn over. And we're going to come up from behind for number 2. Okay, then our working yarn is going to come over the top of our work, and we're going to do 5 purl stitches. Oops, I hit my camera. I'm sorry about that. So we're going to take our loop. Here's our new foundation because it's a completed row. We're going to take our new loop and go down through the center of that new foundation loop. So here our next one. Take our new loop, our working yarn, our working row loop, and go right through the center. Okay, so that's 2. Here's our next one. Here's 3. Here's 4. And our next one is 5. Okay, and then bring it to the back. And as before, always try to bring your loops to the end so they don't accidentally fall out as well. So now we're going to do 3 knit stitches. So our loops from our foundation are going to come up. Our working loop right here is going to come from the bottom up. So there's 1, 2, and 1 more. We'll make 3. I'm hoping that you can see the pattern emerge. Maybe we're still too early in the process of making this. Okay, so after we've done our 3 knits, we're going to do 5 purls, which means you want to bring your working yarn forward. And it's going to go through your foundation loop towards the back. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's number 5. Then you want to bring it to the back, and the end of this row will have 2 knit stitches. Okay, so here's our last one. We're going to come up through the bottom. There's 1 and 2, and this will make it so that it's the end of our row. And then, as you can tell, I'm already brushing it to my left. Okay, so let's make sure all of our loops are now pulled forward. Okay. I'm seeing a little progress here. Let's move on to our next row. For the beginning of our 3rd row, we're going to start off with 3 knit stitches, which means we're going to come up from behind. Here's 1. Here's 2. And here's 3. We have 3 purl stitches, which means we're going to come over the top and go from the front to the back. 1, 2, and 3. And the fun thing about using this loop yarn is that it's always front and back, front and back. Taking our working yarn and either going front or back, front or back. So now we're going to go to the back, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to do 5 knit stitches. So we're going to bring our yarn up from the back, from the bottom to the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, and one more is 5. And then as before, we want to pull them up. Can you see a pattern right here? The triangle and the triangle. Okay, then we have 3 purl stitches. So bring our working yarn in front. Let's push it to the back. 3 times, 3 loops. 1, 2, and 3. And then our last 3 stitches will be knit stitches. So the working yarn goes to the back, and our loops come from the bottom up. 1, 2, and 3. That completes row 3. And as before, we always want to make sure that we bring our loops all the way up. You also probably notice that you're getting a lot quicker with completing these rows. Can you see the pattern? Okay, let me show you what I've done here to help so that we can follow. I've taken Post-it notes and underlined where we're at. So now let's move on to row 4. So I'm going to cover this. So what I was going to say is, if you have a printer at your house, mine stopped working, so I don't have a printer, that you could print this out by screenshot, and that way you can follow with the Post-it note as well. So here we are, we're going to start row 4. You're going to see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 knits, 1 purl, 7 knits, 1 purl, and 4. So let's get started on that. Okay, I'm just going to bring our working yarn across. You notice that my skein started to pull, so we want to pull a little bit out. All right. So the first one is a knit stitch. We want to make sure that we have the next loop. So from the bottom up, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sometimes those purl stitches will push those loops down below. So if it's in your lap and you're doing it, you'll want to double check to make sure you get those next stitches. Then our next stitch is a purl, so you still want to bring your working yarn over the top, open up that loop, and push it down to the bottom. Then we're going to take our working yarn, go to the back, and we're going to do 7 knit stitches. So from the bottom up, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and number 7. Yeah, see, my purl stitch pushed it to the back. Another thing that I've noticed that as we go along, I didn't really remind you, always check your loops to make sure that they're not twisted. I don't think it'll be a big deal if it is twisted, but you don't want your knit stitch to come out looking oblong in a different area as well. Well, you can start to see our triangle right here. And you see our knit triangle here. I hope the camera is doing a great job of showing this, because I can see a beautiful triangle pattern here. So our next stitch is the purl, so we need to bring it to the front, the working yarn, and then we're going to push our loop to the back, and then bring our working yarn to the back, and we're going to knit 4 stitches. So the last 4 on our sample here, so here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as before with every row, make sure your loops are all the way at the end. At the same time, you can also make sure that they're not twisted. And here I have one that fell behind. Those little purl stitches like to push them back. So there we go. Okay, and I'm going to show you in this one to make sure we have 17. Make sure it's in the camera view. Make sure we have 17 loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we are good to go. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to take my little markers here, and we're going to go up a row to row number 5. And you're going to see that it's basically the same thing as what we've done before. It's just that the triangle is actually being pushed to the center, so you'll have half a triangle here instead of just a row of a few triangles. So let's get started on row number 5. And so we want to bring our yarn, our loop row, over, and we're going to start off with the purl stitch. So that means we're going to have to come on top of our foundation, find our next loop, which I almost grabbed the wrong one. So here's our next loop, and we want to go push it to the back 4 times. 1, make sure our loop's not twisted. 2, 3, and 4. Our next stitch is the knit stitch. So we want to bring 1 up from the bottom. And then we want to bring our working yarn on top of our foundation again. And this time we're going to go 7. So we're going to do 7 purl stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 more, make 7. See how it's easier to pull them when you got a foundation to hold on to. Okay, so our next one is 1 purl stitch. Bring your loop up from the bottom. Then we have 4 knit stitches. We have 4 loops left. So let's do 4 purl stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this completes row 5. It's kind of funny because when the purl stitches, so notice how our knit stitches is leaning forward while everybody else is leaning back. So I want you to take mental note of this, because if you in your lap, you don't want to miss a loop and find out that your stitch count could be off or your pattern could be off. Okay, so here we have completed row number 5. You see the triangles right here? This is starting a new triangle, which is going to be this row right here. Now we're moving on to row, whoops, I hit the camera again, sorry. Here we're starting on to row 6. Okay, so we'll be starting off with 3 purl, 3 knits, 5 purl, 3 knits, and 3 purl. Okay, so here we are is where we finished our first purl. We're going to bring our working yarn over the top. So we're going to take our purl goes through. So we have 1, 2, and 3. Then we have 3 knit stitches. I think you're already ahead of me, aren't you? It's okay. 3 knit stitches. So from the bottom up, 1, 2, and 3. Now let's bring our working yarn over the top. We're going to have 5 purl stitches. So from the front to the back, 1, 2, see how that one was folded in the back? 3, 4, and 5. Okay, those were our purl stitches. Now we'll take our working yarn and go to the back. We have 3 knit stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And then we have 3 purls to finish this row out. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and as before, always pull your loops to the end. All right, can you see the pattern change? See the starting to show already. Let's move on to row 7. So in row 7, we'll start off with 2 purl. We'll have 5 knit, 3 purl, 5 knit, and 2 purl. So let's start off with the 2 purl. So that means our yarn is going to be on top. Make sure you grab the next one. There's 1 and 2. Then we're going to have 5 knits, so that means we want to bring it to the back. Bring those loops up from behind. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then we have 3 purl. Looks like it was already ready to jump into the next. It's like the yarn knows what we're going to do, huh? 1, 2, and 3. All right. And then we're going to take the yarn to the back. And we have 5 knit stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we have 2 purl stitches at the end of the row. So bring it over in front, push them to the back. 1 and 2. Isn't this fun? And look how quickly it's going. Can you see the pattern? We're almost done. One more row, and this will complete a total repeat. So our last row in our repeat will be this row right here. We're going to start with a purl. We're going to have 7 knits, 1 purl, 7 knits, and 1 purl. Let me show you the rest. For this will be the continuation on of the repeats. For this particular video, I'm going to encourage you to go back to the beginning of where our rows started at and repeat the steps 1 through 8 to continue getting the pattern. After we've completed this particular row, I'm going to show you how to cast off and make it so that whatever you choose to make, you will not lose your stitching and you will know how to end it. All right, let's get moving on. So we want to bring our working yarn over. Also, that means we might have to take some off of our skein. Did you count your loops to make sure you had 17? Just asking. All right, so our first one will be a purl stitch. So let's bring our working yarn on top of our foundation. Here we have our next loop, and we're going to go through. Our next 7 stitches are knit, so let's bring it to the back. So we have 1, 2, 3. As I pointed out before, I'm taking note if these things are also twisted. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, our next one is our purl stitch. So we just have 1. And then we're going to go to the back. And we have 7 knit stitches. So coming up from the bottom, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And our last one is a purl stitch, so we want to come over and 1 purl stitch. Okay, and this completes our repeat for the 8 rows and the 8 stitches across. Okay, so at the end, I'm going to go ahead and stretch my loops out, make sure they're at the end. And also I will count my loops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Whew. Can you see the pattern in the camera? Okay, here's our triangle. Here's our new triangle. What do you think? I love the coloring. It's perfect. And it's super soft. Now let's flip it over and see what we have on the other side. Wow. Same pattern on the other side. Just the back side of the stitching. All right. There we go. All right. So this is our repeat. I'm going to encourage you to go back to row 1, and you'll find that with row 1, according to our pattern here, you'll have 1 knit, 7 purl, 1 knit, 7 purl, 1 knit. Okay, and then you'll have the 2 and the 5, the 3, the 5, the 2. Okay. I wanted to show you how to cast off. So after you've created the length or the width and then the length, in order to cast off, you want your yarn over here on one side or the other. Then we're going to go to the opposite side, and we're going to come over here and take the last loop, and then we're going to take the next one next to it and go inside that last loop and then bring it over. We're going to take the next on the right, and we're going to go in through the center of the one on the left and pull it over. And we're going to do that all the way to the end of the row. You'll see how simple the casting off is as compared to the pattern that we just did too. And that's a nice thing about this fingering yarn, is that it goes pretty quickly. And the nice thing is like if you're on an airplane or any place and they say, oh, we can't have that because of whatever restrictions, all you got to do is use your fingers. Okay, I'm almost at the end of my row. See how nice that looks? Okay, I have one more loop. Now, you're wondering what do we do with our next loop? Okay, well, what you do is you'll come back here and you'll cut about 4 or 5 loops down, and then you'll want to cut in the center of these loops here. But remember that because we have that that chain stitch in here holding those loops, you don't want to cut too far back. You also want to find where the end is and finish it like we did at the beginning here. Then you'll take that last loop and go right through the center, and then you'll weave it back through your work to hide it. and that'll show you, that'll finish it off for you. Let me just go ahead and show you here. I didn't want to cut it because I wanted to keep working on my pattern here. So you can see how I can still pull out some of these chains. Okay, since we're going to go a little bit further, and I think we're going against the chain right here. Yeah. We're going against the chain, but it still is opening up just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take this last one and go right through. Okay, and that'll pull that last one down. We're going to go ahead and get out our needle. I fold my yarn over, and then take the folded end and bring it through the eye. And then you're just going to come back in here and weave it in. And see how that'll lock it. Now you want to come over to the next one. You don't want to go back through the same one without finding some way of securing it. There you go. Then we'll go ahead and cut it. And that gives us a nice finished edge right here. So, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to make these triangles here with the loop yarn. Using a knit and purl stitch, you can pretty much come up with any combination. And knowing now how to place the working strand in the front of your foundation work as compared to the knit stitch coming up from behind, you can pretty much find any pattern with a knit and purl that will help you with this. I thank you for watching. I hope you come back again for another tutorial. I look forward to having you here. If you like my channel, please subscribe to it. That way you'll have an opportunity to learn more about some of the things that interest me. Maybe it'll be interesting to you. Please like this video and let me know if it's appreciated. So until next time, thank you for watching. So till then, bye-bye.